me today, I have the one, the only, the venerable Ed Lay. Ed, good to see
you. Likewise, thanks for the intro.
Yeah, it was good, wasn't it?
It really was.
So let's start whilst we get some questions queued up from people. You did a TEDx talk, didn't you?
I've done a couple, but yeah.
How many have you done now?
2.
Do you think bringing that up is showing off, or?
Well, I thought you might be leading to a question, and I thought, well, maybe it would help to know which one you were going to question.
I will come to the court of Facebook Live confessional and say, I haven't seen your second one. But I know, I will rectify that. I promise. You can quiz me on it next week. Right? But I have seen the first one. And the reason I use the word confessional is when you and I first met, without sounding derogatory, demeaning, you were a very enlightened personal trainer. And now I would say, well, I'm not going to call you enlightened. Now I would say you're more holistic and encompassing in your approach than you maybe were when we first met. So what was the subject of your first TEDx talk?
The subject of the first TED Talk, first of all, the theme of the day was failure. So the subject of my talk was how the way we tend to approach health and fitness dooms us to failure.
In what way?
Well, we tend to approach it from a standpoint of I'll be happy when, and create an environment of suffering in order to achieve our objective. So we say, I want this physique, let's say I want to lose 20 pounds or something like that. And then we set about how much can I do? How much can I make myself do in order to achieve this objective? And the result is that we tend to end up trying to choose the route that we think is best rather than the route that would be most fun. The result of that is we quit.
Why would we quit if it's the most effective way forward?
Because we're not enjoying it. Right? So let's say you come to the realization that you want to change something. Generally, your life isn't completely empty, right? You've got stuff to do and bills to pay and people to look after and work that needs doing and just all of these everyday tasks. But for some reason, you've looked in the mirror and said, enough is enough, I'm going to make this change. And now I'm going to force this extra stuff into my life because the stuff that's already in my life isn't creating the result that I want. So now we try and shoehorn different ways of eating and a load of exercise into our lifestyle. Maybe we change our sleep time, but let's just say we try and force a load of time-consuming endeavors that we don't enjoy into our lives because we've got the impetus, some momentary motivation, because motivation tends to be fleeting, and somehow we've created some extra time. Probably we've created some extra mental space, like that no man's land between Christmas and New Year, or you've got nothing to do. And then you look forward and you assume that you're not going to be as busy as you were last year. You're not going to be as stressed as you were last year. So there's going to be space for these new things. And then life starts, life happens, which is chaos and things going wrong and stuff not going to plan, which basically happens for everybody every single day. And then the first thing you drop is the stuff that you were suffering, right? The stuff that you weren't enjoying, the stuff that you didn't like gets thrown out first, because your brain basically says, we survived without this before, and we're in survival mode now, not in thrive mode. So let's kick out the other stuff.
Okay. I mean, everything you say logically makes sense. I hear and pick up on what you're saying around, life begins and it's chaos, because somebody I heard once said, the phrase life throws you a curveball should be banished from the English language and be replaced with life is a curveball. Right? This it infers that there is a normalcy and things change, and they don't. They change every minute. But so what you're saying makes total common sense, but it flies in the face of everything anybody that's watched this has ever been told to do, pretty much. So that leaves me in the same way. Well, great, Ed. So I don't shoehorn it in. Well, what do I do instead?
Well, first, you start getting really, really clear on where you actually are. So if we were talking about it from a New Year's perspective, the most effective thing to do isn't to go, what's next year going to be like? It's to go, what was last year like? So what is your current reality? Not just in health, but you could say physical health, mental health, my relationships, my work, my finances, my happiness. You know, break your life down into little pieces and get really, really clear on where you are exactly now. Because pretty much any journey that you want to take, any place you want to get to, has to start with exactly where you are. And what we tend to do is delude ourselves that where we are right now is unimportant. So we try and just go, I'll take on all of that stuff, and just go, well, if you could take on all of that stuff, why isn't it already there? Why weren't you already doing it?
Okay, so I now know where I am. I know where I want to be. To establish those two things. The shoehorning in the exemplary practice isn't going to work. So what do I do? I want to lose 38 kilos.
Okay, so you have 38 kilos that you don't want. That is a byproduct of the things that you're doing now, not the things that you're not doing. It's the things that you are doing. So what things are you doing that is creating that reality? Because if all of the exercise wasn't happening, if the really good nutrition, let's say, wasn't happening, or the extent that you need to create the change wasn't happening, if the sleep wasn't happening, if the hydration wasn't happening to the extent you need to create the shift, then something is happening now that is creating your current reality. So there's probably stuff that you can stop doing. There's definitely stuff that you can stop doing now, that plates that you can stop spinning, that's going to remove a lot of that overwhelm and make space for the other stuff later on.
Okay. As you're talking about this, I'm reminded of Coyotes on, I think it was the Golden Gate Bridge the other day, and the fact that we can see the Himalayas for the first time in like 50 years. It's not that we've done a bunch of stuff recently, it's that we've stopped doing stuff. And almost immediately, I'm sounding a little bit Gaia here, but almost immediately the planet starts fixing itself. Sure. And goes, thank you so much. Okay, I can breathe again. Right, let's grow some trees. Let's let coyotes go and explore the world. And I kind of think what you're saying is the same thing. If you can get rid of some of that stuff, your body will naturally go, awesome, right? Finally, I can get rid of those toxins. I can do this, I can do that.
Yeah, absolutely. That's exactly what I'm saying. I mean, ultimately, it comes down to two things: state and resources. And what most health professionals will tend to focus on is resources, which is great because resources are really, really necessary. But state is infinitely more necessary, and because the state that you are currently in is making the best of the resources that are currently available. But if you can change your state, then your body and brain will start using the resources that are already there far more effectively, and you'll probably stop putting in a load of the other things, right? So if action is state dependent, right, and it is, basically what I mean by that is the way that you feel inside triggers the way that you act. If we can look at the way you feel that is triggering actions that are taking you out of alignment with where you want to go, then your body just starts naturally healing and using the resources that are then available.
Okay, so
more effectively.
And another bad analogy for you then, I think it's fascinating that in the modern world, our healthcare, our medicine, is focused around negating symptoms, not stopping you getting sick. Like there is and I guess it's just where, sadly, where capitalism and business crosses into this realm, because there's very, very little money spent on me not getting a cold, but there is billions of dollars spent helping me stop the sniffle when I have a cold. And that's almost, I think, the same thing you're saying here is instead of spending your money and your time and your energy sorting out the symptoms that are coming from your current state, why not go the step before it and say, okay, why am I in this state in the first place? And what can I easily solve there? Was that a terrible way of putting it?
That's exactly what I'm saying. No, it's really good, really good. We should do this often.
Who'd have thunked it? Okay, so I mean, the good news is it sounds like you're right. The bad news is you're going to be hideously unsuccessful, because this is a much harder message than go to the gym once a week for 45 minutes and lift some weights. It sounds like this is actually, okay, this is a great way to do it, but in some ways it sounds harder.
Yeah, I could see how it might sound harder, but I mean, if I simplify what I've said and say, look at all of the things closely that you currently are doing and how you feel, and then say, how do I currently feel, and what stuff, if I stopped doing it, would move me forward. Basically, you're saying, I'm going to take away a bunch of stuff from my life.
You can have it.
That's easier, right?
You can have it. Yeah, yeah, it is. And it sounds silly. I was on our last call, our group support call, and I said to the people on the call, listen, I need to go and get ready for my panel conversation with Ed. And I walked upstairs, grabbed my daughter, slammed her on her bed and started tickling her for 10 minutes. And then I came down here and did this call, because what I wanted to do was spend some time with my family. My wife's like, what are you doing? And then you have a call. I'm like, yeah, about 5 minutes time. But right now I just want to spend time with my son and my daughter and just play. I think it's a much healthier way to live your life. And I do agree with you. If you look at my weight as a manifestation of health, which it may or may not be a direct, but I think there's definitely a correlation. The times when I lose weight is the times when I'm happy. And the times when I put on weight are the times when I'm not happy. I mean, that seems pretty obvious. As I say it out loud, part of the problem with this is it's like, yeah, that seems really obvious. Maybe I should listen to myself as much as everybody else. Okay, so thanks very much, everyone. That's it. No, not really. So let's talk. So your journey then. So we met as when you ran Absolute Health in Bristol in the UK. Why did you decide to Denmark?
I was on a beach one day in Denmark visiting my wife's parents.
Denmark has beaches. You learn something new every day.
Amazing beaches.
Wow.
Absolutely incredible beaches, white sandy beaches. Anyway, so we were visiting up the road, and just up the road from where I am now. And my wife's father had been sick for, I'm going to say not sick. He had cancer for 3 years, and we came to visit, and it kind of seemed like for the first time that cancer had him. And I stood on the beach, and I just got this moment of clarity where I was like, okay, so things that we want from our lives are, we want to be able to go to the beach often. We want to be able to go to local forest often. We've got a summer house in Denmark that we barely ever get to visit. A big problem that we're going to have coming up is that my wife's mum is going to be on her own in Denmark, with no family, and we're going to have to do something about that. There's going to be a lot more visiting, and then I guess, and also I was really annoyed at the time because I was spending so much time looking after admin and building work and things like that, where I should have been actually working with my clients and helping them. I kind of created this thing for myself that was 5 hours a day of admin and not getting to do the things I wanted to be doing with my time. And I just had this, I guess, all of that came together, and I just turned to my wife and said, hey, do you fancy moving here? She said yes. And then we just put the wheels into motion, and 100 days later, we sold the gym healthcare business. We'd sold our house. We enrolled our daughters in school and Burnahel, or nursery, as it's called here, the other way around, and taken a flat, and that took 100 days.
Okay, and the bit that you haven't mentioned yet is, and what was your strategy for your income when you landed in Denmark?
Oh, no strategy for income.
How's that worked out?
Yeah, all right. I mean, I've been like, I think when I was 10 years old, I started washing people's cars, and from that age on, I realized that money is not hard to create as long as you're kind of joyful in the thing that you're doing. So I was always confident that I could create an income for myself quite quickly. And
yeah.
Yeah.
Right, and what would you rate your health out of 10 when you were in Bristol?
How would I rate my health? I guess if I were to separate it into physical and mental, I would have said I'd give myself a 7 for physical, and a 7 for mental in Bristol.
Okay, and your stress levels?
I was including the 7 in the. I once read a thing that was you can have any number out of 10, but you're not allowed 7. So if I was being honest, then I might. If I wasn't allowed 7, then I'd probably veer towards 6.
Do you know why
mental health would be stressed?
Do you know why you're not allowed 7?
Because everybody picks 7.
You know why they pick 7?
Because no. Tell me.
Your brain counts in 7s. It's why
your brain might.
No, everybody's does. When you do kids in like base 3, base 4, base 5, base 6, base 7, base 8, 7 is the most natural one, which is why phone numbers are 7 digits long. Your brain can hold 7 things in its immediate memory, and as soon as you add an 8th or a 9th, it has to start chunking it into different parts of your brain.
Oh, right, there you go.
The 7 is actually the natural state of humanity, which is why when you say think of a number between 1 and 10, people say 7. Yeah, there you are. See, I know some things about this that you don't. That's fantastic. Okay, what would you put your health and mental health and physical health now you've moved?
I would say, do you know what? I think I'd treat the scale differently. I was going to say 8, but yeah, I would say 8, but because I like to leave space to grow into as well.
I would have said your physical health is about the same, but I would have put your mental health in Bristol personally. I'd have said 3 or 4. Because whenever we spoke, you were fighting yourself in what you wanted to do. You were frustrated about how much time, I'm sure you don't mind me sharing this, you were frustrated about how much time you're spending with your family, and you were having to carve out time to spend with your family instead of the other way around. And you spent not as much time in the office of the gym as on the floor of the gym, but yeah, it was pretty close. And you certainly weren't aligned with your passions as much as I think you are now. And the reason I wanted to go into this bit with people is the important bit for me is I sold a successful business that was earning more. I'm talking as you now, that was earning more than it was costing, that had a good client base, had a niche, had an audience. You were just getting into talking to businesses, if I remember rightly, as well, on that side of things. Everything was going great. You had some good people working for you. You had good friends. Bristol isn't a horrible place to live. It's a nice area of the world in relative terms. It's not like you're living in the middle of a major metropolis. You had the Southwest and Devon and Cornwall within an hour of you, and you literally went, no, this isn't right for me. And you moved without an understanding of how you're actually going to earn money, because if you follow Ed on Facebook, you can kind of read a lot of this journey as you read back through it. It's quite interesting to look back on it as almost a diary. Because the thing that I want to get across to most people is, if you align yourself with your goals and your desires, and you're congruent with your life and your dreams and your wants and etc., it's far easier to be healthy, because you're not fighting your own self. Like, people ask I get quite often, you really should sleep more. And I should, they are right, but I truly love what I'm doing. And I look at the people that don't like what they're doing, but are getting 10 hours worth of sleep. And I go, you really should be in a place where you don't want to sleep because you love what you're doing so much you don't want to go to bed. I find that in some ways healthier than the other way around.
Yeah, I mean, the flip side of that is I speak to a lot of clients or people, should we say, that delay going to bed because they don't want it to be tomorrow. So
that isn't ideal. That's not the best place to be. That's the worst of both.
It is.
I'm freaking miserable and I'm not sleeping right. Yeah, avoid that one for everyone. There you are. There's your health news of the day. Okay, so last time we spoke about, and I think it's been really apparent in everything we've said this week, fear equals stress. Stress equals reduced immune system. The end. It's really that simple. There's lots of stuff in there, but that's kind of as simplistic as it gets. We also spoke a lot about hormones, and I don't know if the people that watch this have as detailed understanding as you do of what is a hormone. Now, that sounds really maybe quite base to you, but we talk about adrenaline, serotonin, melatonin, all of these different things. What are they?
They're basically just signals, right? They're signaling for certain things to happen, right? To go into more detail isn't going to benefit anything, right? So, let's say insulin is a hormone, and it comes out when we're about to eat and while we're eating, in order to start uptaking nutrients. And cortisol is a hormone that is produced to wake us up in the morning, and melatonin is a hormone that its depreciation helps us wake up in the morning, and going up helps us to get back to sleep. But knowing that there are signaling hormones that make certain things happen is helpful enough. But a really good way of thinking about hormones is they are taken up in the liver, among other places. They're taken up in the liver and attached to blood cells, and then transported around the body to make all of the things happen that need to happen. And whenever there is a threat present, perceived threat internally or externally, what the body does is it kicks all of the hormones out of the blood cell, chuck them into the bloodstream, out of the cells, chuck them into the bloodstream, and then just all of the cell then uptakes cortisol, adrenaline, noradrenaline, so that it can deliver that. So the problem that we get hormonally with stress and health is that the hormones that are supposed to be shunted around the body to create different signals and make different things happen keep being kicked off the cell by the stress hormones. And this is where we get things like thyroid issues.
Okay, so you just said that they're basically messengers, right, to go around the body telling different bits.
Yeah.
Isn't that what your nervous system does?
The nervous system is involved in, you could explain it in the same way, but essentially the nervous system will decide which devices are plugged in, but the hormones are kind of the messengers, right? So your brain takes in information from the outside world and from the inside world, it interprets it, and then it decides which branch of your nervous system is going to be working, but hormones are involved in that interplay as well.
Okay, so information in, And brain goes, what do I need to do with this? So for example, let's take an easy one. Sunlight in equals melatonin produced equals the start of the cycle to tell you that you're sleepy.
You mean no sunlight in? Not sunlight in. No sunlight in means melatonin produced.
Yeah,
so start of the cycle.
Thank you. Yeah, vitamin D, sunlight. So sunlight in, vitamin D produced. Sunlight not in, melatonin produced. Melatonin produced says, oh, I need to go to bed.
Essentially, yeah.
Lion running at me, amygdala goes threat, my body goes adrenaline, and away I go, I'm on adrenaline mode.
Yeah, so then let's say that before you saw the lion, you were all chilled out and relaxed. And what would be happening there is you would be dominated by the parasympathetic branch of the nervous system that we basically call rest and digest and memory consolidation and repair and all of those things. And while you're in that branch of your nervous system, all of the hormones that are signaling repair are being sent around. And then you see the lion and all of the hormones are dumped into your bloodstream. Cortisol, adrenaline, noradrenaline are jumped onto the cell. Your body switches to being dominated by the sympathetic branch of your nervous system, and you fight or flight, right? And so the problem that we get when we see lion repetitively, or perceive lions, shall we say, repetitively, is that these hormones never get where they're going, and we don't spend long enough repairing, resting, digesting, consolidating memory. And that's where we kind of get sick.
And well, let's be even more base about it. That's where we accelerate our own death.
Yeah, effectively.
No, I had this put to me like this once. I was like, holy, yeah, okay, right. And they're like, no, every time you go into that mode, the adrenaline, the fight, flight, that mode, your body has totally abandoned its goal of staying alive for 100 years. Your body has gone, I need to stay alive for the next 3 minutes. And whatever damage I need to do to myself to do that, I will do that. Like, it's, again, it's, I guess, pseudoscience, but literally people can rip car doors off in a fire. Right? There's a reason your body stops you from doing that for the rest of the other times, because you don't need to do it, because doing it is going to damage the muscles, the skeleton, and everything else around it, because it's actually too much effort. You shouldn't be able to do that on a continual basis. So if you're in adrenaline mode, you're literally burning the future years off, because your body's like, no, all of that can wait. All of that, repairing that kidney cell, killing off the cancerous cells in my body, dumping my conscious to my subconscious so I can make sense of all that. All of that is all put on hold to say, I need to be able to flex this muscle and flex these muscles and see better so I can run away from said perceived lion.
Yeah, absolutely. Even if your body is, let's say it's working on removing an infection, or you've been poisoned and your body's working on removing that, it will say, lion trumps infection. Let's survive the lion, and then we can go back and work on that infection.
But what you just said isn't totally true, is it? You said if your body's fighting an infection, your body is always fighting.
For sure.
No, but it's an important difference, isn't it? It's, if you are sitting in front of somebody that is perfectly healthy, like when Olivia was born, she had suspected viral meningitis. And one of the ways that that's diagnosed is through a CRP, a central reactive protein count, which is how many proteins are in your blood. And the way it was explained to me, and I'm not a doctor, but it was explained to me in parent language, was the higher the CRP count, the worse health you're in. And I said, okay. I'm like, so what you're saying is if I'm perfectly healthy, my CRP count would be 0. And the doctor went, no, you would never, ever get to 0. Your body is always getting rid of something that shouldn't be there, because you just go outside and take a deep breath of carbon monoxide from a road, and you have a toxin in your body. your
Sure.
body is consistently working on that. And the reason I said I think it's a real big difference for people is I'm trying to make sure that even the people, the healthiest people that hear this, understand how this new normal, how dangerous that fear can be. They can go from being perfectly healthy people to being sick purely by focusing their attention on this new world that we're kind of in and what that can be. Hence why it's so important to be able to look at it from a place of opportunity and perspective, not allow yourself to go into this other nervous system on a better way. I've got questions now, which are probably better than some of mine.
Awesome.
So a couple from Anonymous and a couple from Amanda, and I'm going to mix a couple of these together. So two of them, what food could we reach out for during this time when we're at home to fuel up our body and our mind, as the fridge sadly might have to become our new best friend? And somebody else has asked as well, and thank you for this, what is your take on macronutrients?
I'm going to have to guess into the inference of those questions, not being able to ask questions directly back. But I'll start with the first one because it will help answer I'll start with the second one because it will help answer the first. My take on macronutrients is, well, pretty much everything that we consume. Everything that we consume falls into amino acid, fatty acid, or carbohydrate, right? So, or a mixture thereof. So we call that proteins, fats, carbohydrates, and
fiber, isn't it? Isn't fiber separate?
You'd struggle to find a fiber outside of a carbohydrate.
Okay, so carbs, proteins, fats.
Yeah. So they're the macros, right? There are, there are lots of diets that are like, if it fits your macros, which basically means that there's an exact measurement of macronutrients that you would eat in order to lose weight, maintain your weight, et cetera. And to be an extreme, if it fits your macros, you basically say, as long as I'm meeting these macronutrient requirements, then everything else is fine, which kind of, I don't entirely agree with, because it kind of allows you to eat a lot of crap and allows you to eat a lot of junk, which doesn't really lean towards improving your health. And so that's more of a, let's say it's a physique game for people who believe that they're in great health and are really good at removing toxins, and also basically want to be free to consume anything they want to. So it's, it's not the worst way in the world to eat if you're looking at body composition, but I don't think it's the best either. What it essentially means is that you, for your body weight, have an exact amount of protein based on the amount that you're moving and stuff. You have an exact amount of protein that if you eat this, it will help you lose fat. If you eat this, it will help you maintain. If you eat this, it will help you gain muscle based on the stuff that you're doing, right? But if we were to look at, if you wanted to maintain your muscle mass and lose fat, you'd be looking at somewhere in the region of 2 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight. If you wanted to lose, you might have more.
Of lean body weight, isn't it?
That very much depends on how much fat you have. So let's say you had 15, 20%. Let's say you're a male and you've got 20% body fat, just do it on your weight. If you are a male and you've got 50% body fat, then you're going to lean closer to the weight that you would be without. But if you were going to try and lose, you'd probably get, from a macro standpoint, you'd be looking at 2.5 to 3 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight. Maintenance, you could be looking at maybe 1.5 grams per kilogram of body weight, i.e. you just want to stay exactly as you are.
And that's something I think is so amazing, because every time I've gone on a diet that has been successful with my weight, every single person I've dealt with has, when they look at a food diary, has gone, you're not eating enough. Because, and we've got this question coming up, because one of my passions is heavy weights and lifting. And that's something I get a lot of a kick from. And they're like, you've got to eat more. I'm like, what do you mean I've got to eat more? No, I want to lose weight. What do you mean I've got to eat more? And they go, yeah. Can you explain that for a sec? Because that truly, even when it's explained to me, it boggles my mind. To lose weight, eat more. What?
Okay, so to finish off the question from before, you would work out the remainder of your calorie allowance split between fat and carbohydrates. And really, it doesn't matter which one of those you choose. Just look at the menu and what you fancy and the nutrients that you most want to get in. And you just split up the remainder of your calorie allowance. And you can find calorie counters online. So macros do matter. And I don't try and pay too much attention to it, but I'll look at the way someone's eating and go, hey, can we move this towards this? And every time someone eats more protein, they tend to lose weight. There's 3 ingredients in fat loss, and they are enough protein, enjoyment, and not overeating the other things. But if you've got enough protein there, overeating is almost impossible. I say almost. The reason, okay, is that if we are going to undereat an amount of food, we want our body to say, I need to relinquish something to give me energy. So it's either going to say, I'm going to diminish your energy levels. I'm going to make you sluggish. I'm going to mess up your sleep. I'm going to not do any of the jobs that need doing. I'm going to store body fat, and I'm going to remove muscle, because muscle's the most expensive thing. Okay, so from your body's perspective, you're not eating enough food. This body needs to cut how many calories it requires to sustain life. So it's going to take away some energy and it's going to drop some muscle mass. And your muscle mass it's kind of like your metabolism, right? It's the rate that you burn fat along with how much you're moving and everything that's going on inside of you. It's the rate that you burn fat. So if you're going to undereat, the most important thing is that you maintain the amount of muscle that you have. And muscle is maintained by protein. So if you keep your protein levels high, then your body's going to say, okay, I can look after the current muscle mass and I can start letting go of some of this fat. But if you flip it the other way around, then your body says, well, I'm going to drop fat, but I'll also drop muscle as well. And you're going to slowly get weaker and weaker and lose more and more energy as you go through that process.
Okay. So then what food can we be keeping in the fridge to fuel our body and mind? I know I love your rainbow, your different color spectrum.
Yeah, so the fridge being the best friend, right? We are drawn towards food when we are stressed, and boredom is a stress. And we crave when we're not eating enough food. So that's why the macros question was important. So if you eat enough, and the way I like to just say eating enough is work out your protein requirement, divide it across the number of meals you like to eat in a day. Maybe 3, 2, or 1 would be my recommendations. And then fill the rest of your plate with as many vegetables as you possibly can. And you will take away 99% of your cravings. Then move a couple of times in the day, maybe 5-10 minutes, join Hack Mankind and follow my workouts, just brief workouts. And then those cravings for food based on I'm stressed, I need to naturally calm my nervous system down, can be taken care of with physical activity rather than with snacking. I don't recommend having snacks in your fridge. I recommend eating enough at every meal. If yesterday you snacked, eat more today in your meals.
Okay, but it can't be that simple, Ed. You can't have 500 million people obese across the world with the general state of health that we have. And the 500 million was totally made up, by the way, but most of Western Europe and most of North America. And it all boils down to that simple. What is everybody missing if it's that easy and everybody gets it that wrong?
That's a really, really big question. And for, you know, there are people in the world, many, particularly in the West, in America, I'm going to say, that have had really shitty crappy, bad circumstances happening to them in their lives, where they're stuck, dominated by the sympathetic nervous system, and almost cannot enter the parasympathetic nervous system. That's to do with traumas that have happened in life and all sorts of things like that. But there's really strong correlatory evidence with chronic illnesses and obesity stemming from childhood and up to teenage kind of traumas. So that's a really, really big area. And also our behaviors are triggered by our feelings, right? So we're not going to be able to, these tips are all really useful for people who thought they were doing the right thing but weren't. Those people can change, right? But they make up 2 out of 10 people that have a health challenge. Everybody else it's my environment determines my feelings determine my behavior. And it's environment first, what's going on in your internal environments, what stuff is playing on loop for you that is creating your feelings, that are creating your responses.
So it's just, so environment leads to feelings lead to.
Okay, so let's do the whole thing, right? We've got our actions are determined by our inner dialogue. Our inner dialogue is determined by our thoughts. Our thoughts are determined by our feelings. Our feelings are determined by our emotions. Our emotions are triggered by our environment. Our environment holds associations from the past. Past associations in our current environment create our actions.
So change the environment, you change the actions.
Right.
Or change the thoughts that are triggered by the environment if you can't change the environment itself.
Quite, yes.
Okay, that it really is that simple then. Okay, some other questions here then. So from Amanda, how do you regulate female hormones with food and supplements when all of the things you may be used to, the ability to go outside and all that's been disrupted? How do you maintain female hormones specifically, if that's an area you can talk to?
Again, as we've spoken to on, I think on our previous live, is zooming in on stuff like that. There may be backlash if anybody's watching this. Zooming in on stuff like that is almost never necessary. Almost never necessary. We're looking at the big picture. If all of the hormones that need to get to where they're going, get to where they want to go, everything else just falls in line, right? It's the stress response or threats in the environment, perceived threats in the environment, that cause the hormones that need to get where they're going to keep falling off.
Yeah, and I think I'm gonna, if you thought there was a backlash to that, wait till I say this. Has to deflect.
Thank you.
But Jessica Ennis, the Olympian, was actually found it hard to conceive her child because her hormonal cycle had stopped, because her body fat had dropped below what her body was comfortable with, and she put herself in a constant fear, stress state. And the reason I'm saying her specifically is I'm now referring to an Olympian, right? As to somebody that is exemplary for how fast they can do X or how quickly they can do Y, isn't necessarily the epitome of health, right? Because they're training for such a specific goal, they negate their overall health to actually achieve that goal. So I'm using this as another example of what you just answered, because that's how important it is just to look at that. I hate this word, but the holistic, the overall, versus zooming in on specific things. Because like most people would say, when you say what body fat, what body fat percentage you want, if someone says 0%, it's like, well, you're you're dead. What's the recommended body fat for women and men again, roughly, give or take ish?
Let's rather than getting into the specifics of body fat, them just being side effects of what we're seeing, most athletes are to health what Steve Jobs is to health, right? In that Steve Jobs was a business athlete. Athletes are physical athletes, but they're still doing the same stuff to their nervous system to produce the best level of performance possible to beat the other person. Now, they are not a model of health. They are a model of suffering to get to the result that you want to, right? Her issue wasn't to do with this specific amount of body fat. That was just one of the symptoms that had the result.
Yeah, makes sense. I just think, I think it's an important example because we have to be careful of the people that we personify and look up to in some of these areas.
Absolutely.
Steve Jobs, not even just on the health side, most people that met him do not credit him as a very nice individual. Most people that work for him do not credit him as a great manager. Was he a leader? Was he a visionary? Yes, absolutely. Was he a good father? No, not really. Denied a DNA test that was showed to him for coming over a decade, because the pursuit of excellence in any one given area almost always negates the overall of everything else. If you want to be excellent at one thing, you will make those sacrifices, just like we said, just like you would internally, you make them externally as well. But if you want overall health, you need to be looking at a bigger picture.
Yeah, although I mean, there's evidence to show that that's just the bad approach to it. When you pull people around you that can support you, I would point to Ronaldo in football, probably the second greatest footballer of all time, if not the first, who has basically pulled in a whole team of people around him to make sure that he's aligned in all of those areas. So I would say that although a lot of people have taken the route of, in order to get to the top, I need to suffer in all of these other areas, it doesn't necessarily have to be that way if you're willing to get a coach.
Well, no, it's true. But it's Ronaldo is the perfect example, and I acknowledge that you said that Harry Kane is the greatest footballer of all time, and Ronaldo is obviously second to him. But it's a great example because everybody's so busy, worshipping or paying homage at the feet of Ronaldo, not the 18 people that he put around him in order to do it. And I think that just like we look at whether it's Dyson or J.K. Rowling or Tesla or Musk or whoever it might be, it's very easy to just take a slice of somebody's life and worship and respect that slice, versus looking at the failures that they went through to get there, the team they have around them to do, the adversity they have. One of the things I constantly get is when I take, if I take a 2-week holiday, I'll have friends who go, "I was lucky to be you." I'm like, come and walk a mile in my shoes before you say that, because for the other 3 months, I was working 2 shifts for every 1 shift you were working to buy myself the time to go and do those 2 weeks. And it's so easy to look at one aspect of somebody's life and go, "Wow, you're amazing, it was fantastic." There's always more detail behind it. We have a couple minutes left. I have a couple of more questions for you. I might answer that one myself first. In fact, I will. Amanda said, "What are your thoughts on sugar?" And I'm going to answer that question first. I'm going to change it to, "What are your thoughts on refined sugar?" From sugars as a whole. And my thought, Ed, I think we might have had this conversation, is I believe in my lifetime we will see a leaked memo from the heads of one of the big soft drink companies that put them in the same light as the tobacco companies, where the true ramifications of refined sugar, aspartame, sugar substitutes, it becomes known that larger companies always knew how bad they were for us. And I'm literally to the same level as tobacco. What's your thoughts?
Well, our tongues can taste salt, fat, sugar, umami, and bitter. And the reason that they can taste them is so that when they are present, our brain was able to say, this isn't poisonous, and give us a dopamine reward so we can remember where to go to get those things, because they be the indicators of nutrition. Okay, so real food holds those 5 things in them. And when we find those sources, our brain goes, here's a dopamine reward so that you will remember, you will wire this food to this dopamine reward so you'll remember where to go to get it. Processed food is the removal of the nutrients and just the presence of those indicators. And so if you are a junk food or junk drink producer, you would be an idiot to go, these are the 5 indicators of nutrition that will wire this product into my brain so that I will always seek this whenever my brain says seek something you need for comfort and sustenance. You'd be crazy not to have those things more abundant than in any other food in nature. And therein lies the recipe behind all processed foods and drinks. They put salt, fat, sugar, umami in such in such high quantities without the nutrients that your brain goes, here's where to go to get the nutrients. And then you go drink it and eat it. And because there's no nutrients in it, your brain says, keep having more, keep having more, keep having more until you're full. Which is why the marketing campaigns behind junk food and junk drinks isn't share of market, it's share of stomach. Because once your brain has associated that thing with nutrients, you will become, for want of a better way of putting it, hooked on that thing. So you'll keep going back to that source because your brain, every time it says, go get some dopamine, or go chase a nutrient that you need, it will take you to that source.
So my body goes, I need some sugar. And I then go, I'll go and grab a can of Dr. Pepper.
Yeah, because it's that process happened before it. So it says, go get Dr. Pepper. You don't see that process.
Well, yeah, so actually I think I can word that better. My body says I need sugar. My brain translates that as go find something sweet. And I'm using those 2 words slightly differently on purpose. My brain goes, where did I last get a massive set of sweet from? I got that when I had that taste. That taste I can find in Dr. Pepper. I'll go and have some Dr. Pepper. My brain goes, ta-da, sweet, dopamine, boom. But my body goes, no, I said I needed sugar.
Yeah.
So the message from my body back to my brain, as if dualism is a thing, is saying, no, you haven't yet achieved what I asked you to achieve.
Yeah, keep going, get more, get more, get more.
And my brain goes, yeah, well, I know where I get that. I get it from there. And away we go again. And away we go again.
Yes.
Again. Hence why Diet Coke has been proven to have weight gain, not weight loss, I believe.
I don't know about that.
I read something on that once, that aspartame is actually even worse than what we're talking about, because it essentially it's doing that but on steroids, because it's over sweet. So you then become hooked into that, whilst also getting the dopamine hit of congratulations, you've done something good for your weight, because of the word diet on the can. So congratulations, you've really helped out, not just the need for a sugar, but also the need to validate your identity as well.
Yeah, and then there's, I mean, why are you having so many stress responses that your body is requesting sugar all of the time as well, right? So you're either chronically under eating or you're getting loads and loads and loads of stress response. Again, probably something you're suppressing, or you're just constructed a life that you hate.
Constructed life that you hate. Well, welcome to your world. I met a guy that ran a fairly big bakery once, and he said, you know, all these people with a gluten intolerance. He said, I'm not saying a gluten intolerance doesn't exist. He said, but 98% of people don't have it. I mean, what do you mean? He went, the problem is that commercial bread is proven for about 2 to 4 hours, whereas if you go back to artisan and you go back to what this guy was kind of more of an artisan type baker, he's like, we prove our bread for up to like 3 days. That we remove so much of the stuff that you end up eating versus commercial. It's the same kind of things we're talking about as junk food, of removing the process of creating food, finding the shortcuts for capitalism. Doesn't necessarily mean removing all the stuff that you probably don't want in there eventually.
Sure.
Like I saw the probiotic count of a mainline supermarket brand probiotic yogurt the other day, and compared it to a probiotic company that's kind of what they do for a living. And the multiples weren't like 2.5, 3.5. It was like 2,500 times more in the actual original. I think it was kefir, the original product, as it would be manufactured or produced traditionally and historically, versus the thing you would go and buy in the supermarket that's calling itself a prebiotic. And it was literally about 2,500 times difference in its amount. It was quite phenomenal.
Yeah, you can't get that stuff cheaply. You have to you have to invest if you're looking for pre and probiotics.
Yeah. Okay. Last question, and then I'm going to let you go because we're just hitting an hour. More on a totally different tack from nutrition. How important do you think flexibility of the body is versus heavy weight training? Do they go together or are they separate?
They go together. Basically, flexibility is the degree of safety your brain has in that position. So it's not a product of stretching, although that can be something that may go. The splits aren't functional in everyday life, right? But if your brain feels safe, you can get to quite a wide range. Just like resting your hands against the floor is functional in everyday life, that everybody should be able to do as a product of their brain going, it's safe for you to go there. And if you have less than that, it's because your brain has said it isn't safe for you to go here based on your kind of composition and the information that I'm getting and the interpretation of it. But flexibility would be, I can put my hands on the floor, but I'd like to be able to put my elbows on the floor or my head on the floor or whatever, right? So that's the difference between, let's say, gymnast and dancer and flexibility. But flexibility is a product of your brain saying it is safe for you to go here because you play near here a lot. And so I don't ever incorporate any kind of stretching really in anybody's kind of routines unless there's some sort of pain that stretching will facilitate temporarily to move into it. But creating controlled movements, like let's say sitting into a squat position and then learning to sit down from that squat position and getting back up, but all in a calm, controlled fashion rather than trying to force some end range of motion. And
so I guess your answer on flexibility versus like gymnast is also the same when you talk about weight. So I'm guessing you feel the same about that. Should you be able to lift an amount of weight? Yes, because that's functional. Should you be able to lift 7 times your body weight while standing on 3 toes? Probably not.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's the difference between, are you training to be a gymnast or are you just training to for life to be easier, right? So am I trying to beat the guy next to me? Is this ego? Or, which is fine, right? You can train to beat the guy next to you if you want, but if you're just training for health, then you don't need to be able to lift X times your body weight. But being safe in each position and then being able to lift something under control, and that being your brand of fun is fine. But there's so much of a wide array of possible exercises and loading, and there are people that are very strong that just get very strong with their body weight, and there are people that choose to do it with weights, and no one is healthier than the other. It's the sport that you've decided to take out of your exercise.
And strong isn't necessarily healthy. Right.
Not necessarily. No, you can't put it up as one of those measures to say I'm healthy because I'm strong, but you could say I'm unhealthy because I'm vulnerable in these multiples of different positions and lifting these loads.
Right, because I'm strong, but I would not class myself as healthy. And I've met people, you know, in the gym world that I go in that I regard as far healthier than me, that certainly aren't as strong as me. So but that's something that I enjoy. So it's something I do. So fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. And it will benefit your health, right? Just going through the practice of doing those things.
Yeah, and I guess the only thing that we didn't say right at the beginning that we should really say on all these calls is everything that we're talking about applies to the 90th percentile, right? So, you know, there are individual cases, Ed said, you know, with regards to trauma, there's individual cases of injury, there's individual health issues that change these answers dramatically. So if you hear anything we're saying, you like it and you want to do it, you know, what we're saying should work for the majority of people, but that's what you have a doctor and that's what you should get a trainer and a coach for, is to make sure that this all applies to you. So
we should start doing that.
Yeah, we should get a trainer. Do you know any, Ed? Any good ones?
Yeah, loads.
So, Ed, any final thoughts before I wrap up?
Yeah, that is it. It's you are an experiment. So to end on the note that we started on, work out exactly where you are now and be really honest with yourself of where you are now, and work out what you need to stop first before you work out what you're going to start if you want to improve your health.
Amazing. Work out what you need to stop before you work out what you need to start. Brilliant. Ladies and gentlemen, on Zoom, I had some amazing questions. Thank you very much. And also to the people on Facebook, please come and join us on www.hackmankind.com. We're here to help you get rid of fear, provide you amazing information we just did with Ed. Tomorrow, our panelist at the same time is Michael Smikin from Carnegie Law. He brings on some amazing guest speakers. I'm sure it'll be as good as it always is. Please tune in. First 1,000 members that join us are free, and everything we do will be free for life for first-line responders, so doctors, nurses, EMTs, teachers, police officers and firefighters. Thank you for everything you're doing for us. We appreciate your sacrifice. We appreciate that you're putting yourselves in harm's way for me and my family and our communities and everybody else. So we appreciate everything you do, and we hope to see you all soon. Ed, I will see you tomorrow morning, where I will again get out of breath and go, yeah, no, I can't keep up with you. When you say, yeah, if you can keep up with me, that's great. I go, yeah, good luck with that. I need the people that can keep up with you. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.